Hi all, I'm Cullen Haynes and welcome to Live with Cullen Haynes, LawLive, episode 72. I can't believe we're up to episode 72 already. Thank you so much for all those returning guests. Thank you so much for tuning in, rewatching, re-listening, or subscribing to the podcast and whatnot. For those tuning in for the first time, LawLive is the part of our show where we interview leading legends in the legal world who are making an impact, making a difference, and doing things differently. And my next guest is certainly one of those, was in the accounting world for many, many years and made the transition, much to a lot of advice to the contrary, to join the dark side and go to the legal world in 2020. So has been at this for the last 5 years and is here to be talking to us about winning the work that matters and how you in the legal profession can win more work and become the rainmakers and make it rain. Could you please make very welcome my dear friend, Marnie Payne, the founder of BifFit. How are you, Marnie?
Very good, and thank you for having me, Cullen. I should say, though, I abandoned the accountants to come over to law in 2010, so actually 15 years of working
my gosh, excuse me, 20, that's 15 years. And like, I know it's hard to say off the bat, who do you like better, accountants or lawyers?
Well, I only worked with the accountants for 10 years, so I must like the lawyers or the legal world.
There you go. That's a good point. Very good save. Good save. And, before we get into the questions, just off the bat, what is happening in your world? We were talking offline about all the flux in the market that's happening and whatnot, and it's creating some unusual sentiments.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of an uncertain time for the clients of lawyers. So what's happening in business, the geopolitical developments, what's happening in the US, the impact that's having on the markets that Australia relies on Asia Pacific, and what does that mean for lawyers working with those clients? I think there's quite a bit of uncertainty about what levels of work. I think price sensitivity also seems to rise as soon as there's uncertainty in the market. Clients start sharpening their pencils a little bit more because their budgets are being slashed. But people still need advice. They still want to close deals. They still get into troubles that their lawyers can help them with. So there's still lots of opportunities out there. It's just maybe a little bit more competitive at the moment.
Absolutely. And it's all about mindset, right? Even in every industry, I'm a big fan of Zig Ziglar, and he says, everyone is in sales, even if you don't have the title of salesperson. I'm going to use the word so you don't have to use it, but let's change it up. Lawyer in the BD world for legal professionals, what can they do in your long and luminous career dealing with lawyers the last 15 years? How can they win more work and more work that matters to them is the question.
Yeah, I think that's a very big question, and I think it can be different case to case. So one of the metaphors I tend to use a little bit is looking at, are you a GP, a general practitioner equivalent, or are you providing something like brain surgery? Now, if you're the best brain surgeon in the country, how much do you have to reach out and do your own profiling? How nice do you have to be? How conveniently located? Do you really care if you're, the brain surgeon you need for yourself or a loved one is around the corner and has good office hours? Not that much. If you're offering a more general service, still very valued, but maybe you need to be a bit.
Oh, Marnie has just logged off there. We're getting into some cogent insights there, but we'll be bringing Marnie back very soon. But I was already picking up what I was putting down and whatnot. So while we are waiting, be sure to subscribe, like to the podcast and on Spotify as well. And we're also coming to you live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, X. So could you please put your questions into Marnie? We'll be bringing her back in just a moment. Because this is live, everyone. This is 12:21 Australian Eastern Daylight Time here in Wednesday, the 2nd of July, and we are bringing Marnie back. The connection dropped you out, Marnie, but we were on a great tear there. Do you have to be conveniently located as a doctor? Like we're up to that part and then drop.
So I think if you look at lawyers as well, there are certain areas of law where your entire world is on fire. You still need to be profiling, but how much does your existing relationship?
That's good. How much does the existing relationship matter? We'll bring in Marnie back in a moment. Also, we are coming out with lots of episodes of different varieties. We've got the LawLive, which we're doing with Marnie. We've also got Ledger Legends for accountants and Finance Live for general finance and everyday finance professionals. We're bringing you back, Marnie.
Sorry, there's a slight issue with StreamYard, I think, and how it's working.
That's okay. We'll blame the StreamYard. We'll be putting in a complaint. That's for sure. They're not winning more work that matters on this side. That's it.
Sorry about that. It could also be the weather event that's currently hammering Sydney. I'm not sure if that's having
the hurricane bomb or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. So I think each lawyer, I think, can have their own approach to building their relationships, building.
Oh my goodness. So sorry, everyone, that we're having these technical issues. It's on a obviously very bizarre weather at the moment in Sydney here. It's going crazy. We're bringing Marnie back. I don't know whether switching to hotspot might work there, Marnie.
Yeah, give me 1 minute.
Yeah, take your time. While you switch to hotspot, we'll just talk about what I was talking before. So, with two little ones, 2 under 2, I have been obviously recording all these episodes, LawLive, Ledger Legends, and Finance Live in the background. And we've just been using the podcast just to, give rise to the LawLive. But now we're starting to upload the Ledger Legends on the podcast and the Finance Live. So it's a bit confusing. It's kind of like some of the other podcasts out there where there's multiple shows in one. I didn't want to create another podcast for Ledger Legends and another podcast for Finance Live. So it might be confusing to get your head around, but it's live with Cullen Haynes, but we've got all these different shows that we're bringing you. So Marnie's episode will be 72 and the other episodes through Ledger Legends. So yeah, Marnie, if you try connecting to the hotspot, I think that might help. Yeah.
Yeah. Give me 1 more minute.
Take your time. And as I said, any questions, comments, queries, or concerns you'd like to bring up with Marnie, we are live right now. We've got some great questions I'll be asking about helping, firms grow over 70%. What's the secret? One things lawyers understand, often misunderstand about BD. Marnie's worked across different sectors, how she tailors growth, a surprising and underrated skill Marnie has, we'll be talking about. When a day is packed with deadlines, what does Marnie do to unrest, to unwind and reset? Passion projects Marnie's working on as well. Any unusual client requests that have come across her desk, any influential mentors Marnie's had in her life. If she could change one thing about the legal industry, what would it be? And what advice would she give to young professionals starting out in the industry? You definitely want to stay on tune for that one. I mean, we'll finish with the question that we always like to ask: how would Marnie like to be remembered? And we got some bonus questions as well. So we are obviously live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, X, and TikTok. We got the TikTok going on here. So highly recommend you put your questions in. And if you haven't already, give us a cheeky like and subscribe on the Apple and Spotify. Really appreciate it, so we can help extend this reach and talk to more Ledger Legends, legal lawyer legends as well, and anyone in the finance and wider professional services realm with our Finance Live. So the reason why we're having to do this today with all the technical difficulties, if you haven't been living under a rock, Sydney has absolutely been bombarded by this extreme weather event. And, I went into the city yesterday, which was Tuesday, and it was absolutely detrimental in terms of the amount of rain coming down. So anyone who's going into the office today, it's working from home Wednesday today, but I tip my hat off to you because it's certainly pretty wild out there, let me tell you. But yeah, we're excited to be bringing Marnie back in just a moment. And again, if you've got any questions or anything like that, put them in the podcast. Marnie's back with the hotspot. Very, very good. Thanks for coming back, Marnie. No, don't say sorry. I'm gonna blame StreamYard and the weather event as it. But keeping it like this is obviously still in line with what we were talking about. What sparked your interest in BD work for lawyers in particular, having come from the accounting realm?
Well, I really like working with really smart, ambitious people.
Yes. There we go. lawyers and certainly smart and ambitious people, that's for sure. And definitely was working with accountants up until 2010. Oh, we got Marnie back.
It keeps happening. I've swapped.
That's all right. What I think we can do, Marnie, give me a sec, everyone. Hey, Marnie, I'm just thinking, are you on your phone?
Yes.
You could join on your phone as well. We found that tends to be a good little side hack for everyone.
Okay. Let me do that. I'm very sorry for the technology
No,
issues.
don't say sorry. It is what it is. Modern technology.
We'll conquer then. Give me 1 minute and I'll come back.
Absolutely. Well, while Marnie is doing that, we'll have a look and see. Let's have a look. Let me share my screen, see if we can have a look at what is happening in Marnie's world. Here we go. Let me bring up BifFit, Marnie Payne, and we'll have a bit of a look at what's going on. Here we go. Let me bring up this. So let me show you my screen if it works. Share screen. Oh, yes, it does. Here we go. So this is Marnie's LinkedIn page that you can see here. Very, very impressive background. Founder of BidFit, all about bidding to win, contracting, consulting projects, etc. And was at Ashurst for 3 years in Hong Kong. Asia pitch team co-lead at Freshfields, Brockus and Derringer, and also Norton Rose Fulbright for 5 years and 7 months as well. So very impressive background and pedigree. Also Henry Davis York in 2013 to 2014. So kind of gives you the background of what we'll be talking about today with Marnie. And we're going to be focusing on basically how lawyers and legal professionals can win more of the work that matters, which is what we're talking about now. I'm bringing Marnie back off the phone. That looks good, Marnie. Here we go.
Okay, brilliant. So the last question was, what should young lawyers know? What should lawyers be thinking about in this space? What's the biggest challenge?
I guess what those things, and what sparked your interest in the BD for working with legal professionals?
I really like working with smart, ambitious people, and I'm one of those kids who always asks why. Why do we do it like that? How does this work?
Yes.
So it was very much sort of fit in with that, and I really like to win as well, and win for the people I'm working with. So
of course,
into BD, moving into bidding, pursuits, proposals, sort of help feed that ability to go, yes, we've nailed it. We've got the client really thinking about, we are the best option for this particular piece of work or for this panel. And that's brilliant. That makes me very happy.
No, absolutely. And I was going through your background as well on your LinkedIn page. You've helped many firms win rates by over 70%. So I'd love to ask, what's the secret sauce? What's the secret to winning bid or pursuit?
Yeah, I think any bid professional will say qualification. You have to make sure you're not chasing sort of the wrong sort of work that you can't win. And just being able to do the work isn't enough. You have to be able to win it and think about, how do we win this work? And part of that is, wherever possible, having a relationship, understanding the client already before any bid or tender hits your desk. And if you're doing really well, sometimes you can avoid having to do a bid or tender, but procurement, formal procurement, the requirement to actually do bids and proposals is growing. So if you had no idea an RFP is coming and you don't have any relationships, you're really on the back foot. So all of that area that Alistair Marshall talked to you about
yes,
relationships with clients and working on that is super important. But then when you get into the actual RFP or proposal or bid, sharing that information with the team, hopefully you're working with a team. If not, if you're a person who's working on their own on bids, then it's less important. But if you're working with other lawyers, if you're working with BD professionals, sharing that intel, sharing that knowledge so they understand what really matters to this client. So that can go into the document that's being produced, the presentation and beauty parade, all of those things. Because otherwise it really comes off like if you have met someone and talked with them a lot and then you meet them again and nothing you have told them has been remembered or cared about. That's what it can be like if you're producing a bid document or doing a presentation that doesn't reflect any of that knowledge. So I've seen a lot of times where lawyers are going, we have to be more efficient. And for me, efficiency is absolutely great, but for bidding, you want to be effective. You want to be able to win the work and figure out how to be efficient later. So for me, saving time by not briefing in the team, not briefing in your colleagues about how the opportunity came about, what competitors we might be up against, taking the time to talk to the client, if at all possible. If you have gotten an RFP and you are not banned from talking to the client, talk to the client, ask questions, make sure that what you're putting together answers their questions. And again, if you're equivalent of a lawyer and you're the best person at something that's absolutely life-saving, you don't have to be that good at it because they're already thinking of you. So they've been told this is the best person for this thing that will make or break. But if there is one other person in the market, one other firm that is as good as you at what you're doing, technically the legal aspects, then being a bit better at producing the bid, at building the relationships, at understanding and reflecting what they need, that's where you win more work. And maybe you don't need to. Maybe your win rate's already over 50%. Maybe you're already winning all the work you can absolutely be able to. And at that point, maybe efficiency is your biggest problem. But, you know, if your win rate isn't at 50% or your win rate's under 50%, something like that. And I should say, if you don't know what your win rate is and bidding is a big aspect of how you bid in new work, I'd be starting to look and gather that data and understand what really where you are. Are you happy with what you're winning? Are you happy with the profitability of what you're winning? Are you winning by continually discounting and discounting? Because I've seen that happen. And a lot of the time you can discount almost to nothing and the client still doesn't hire you. So it's not all on price. A lot of the time there is price, but other things. They're looking at the overall value.
Good point. It's not all about the price. Would you say that's the one thing lawyers often misunderstand about BD? And what high performers do differently, or is there something else?
It's one of the things, but if you ask them, so were we the most expensive option, or were we,
yes,
was cheaper than us? They will say, oh yes, this other firm or lawyer was cheaper, but everyone knows they're a bit rubbish. So the client wasn't willing to go with the lowest price. It was the lowest price that could deliver what they needed. So they're looking at value. The other thing, though, and particularly as you get into that pointy end of having to produce some sort of document or give a presentation as part of winning new work, it's not actually about you. You're not there to tell them how wonderful you are. You're there to show them that you understand what they need, and convince them that you are the best people to deliver on that. So it's the difference between going, hi, my name's Marnie Payne, and I'm absolutely wonderful. I'm the best bid professional in the market in Australia. Have I mentioned how good I am? That's not going to be that convincing. But also I can then go, I have helped firms improve their win rates by 70% or more. So there's some proof. I can give you some quotes. Wow, Marnie is fantastic. It's still all about me. If I turn it around and go, Cullen, you have a law firm. You win 40% of your new work requires some sort of bid or proposal activity. You're currently winning under 25% of those. The impact of improving your to 35% would be an extra $1 million in profitability on your bottom line. I can help you do this. I have done this with other firms. Here's the approach I would take. So one approach is about me, and I went from the really awful just motherhood statements of I'm wonderful to here's how I've really helped other firms. And that's a good position to be in. I'm showing and providing some proof. But if I turn it around to I understand exactly what your problem is, I have solved it in the past, here's how I'll go about solving it for you, and here's the outcomes you can hopefully achieve. Imagine if your presenting that to your client and the other firms, just say going, well, thank you so much for inviting us to bid. We're really cheap and, we'll do a pretty good job.
No, I'm endeared by what you're saying, and it obviously doesn't just apply to the law world and bidding, but just in general. We've all heard the pitch slap, or when someone just does a sales barrage vomit of this is what I do, blah 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 blah, and they're just talking about the product and the features rather than the benefits that the people will get out of it that you're selling to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also compare it to that, if you're at a networking event and someone just does, that vomit of meanness on top of them. And one of the people I've worked with in the past, a bid writing trainer in the UK, talks about weeing all over the client. So this is in the bid documents of we're wonderful, you should hire us. It's all about you. It's also the three little pigs. We're wonderful, we can do this work, we should be the ones you hire. We.
Yeah.
So it's the orientation is wrong, and it's actually really hard to turn that around. And you have to know something about the client. You have to have been discussing this particular opportunity with them, because maybe 90% of the time it's all about sort of price and value and your payment terms, as well as being good at the work. I mean, if they're coming to you to bid, they're assuming you can do the work. So that's table stakes. But, if there might be one opportunity or one issue they have where, price is absolutely low on the list because, maybe they've just had a data hack. Maybe they're on the front page of the Financial Review saying that 1 million Australians' details have just hit the market, and there's, evil actors in Russia who are, currently, emptying their bank accounts. At that point, in that sort of scenario, you're not really that concerned about the price.
Yes.
Understand what do they need in that situation and focus on that. It's about them and how you can help them, not about you.
No, that's a good points that you make. And you've obviously worked across many different sectors and countries. How do you tailor that growth strategy in those different environments?
I think it really depends on, again, going back to that data, understanding what are the opportunities here for you. What capabilities do you have? What clients, customers, can you help better than others? How well positioned you are. There's also a whole piece around, if you're in a jurisdiction where you're not local, you don't have the local knowledge and understanding. How does that change how you go? How does that change, how you might be winning work? So I spent 5 years working in Hong Kong, but I would absolutely never consider myself an expert on Asian culture or buying processes. I have some understanding, certainly, but I would go and work with experts who understand that, who can guide me. So I'm not, making terrible faux pas or making assumptions that there are opportunities that I just don't qualify for whatever reason.
Makes sense. And probably a good little link in there. What's a surprising skill or underrated skill that's helped you succeed in your field?
It's interesting when I went, because Asia is very a little more formal in the business sense than perhaps we see in Australia. There is a little bit more protocol around how you engage with people in many ways.
Absolutely. You got to take the business card with two hands, right?
Yes. And various other small things and large things. Understanding face bidding. There are formal requirements for some state-owned enterprises in Asia to have X number of bids before they make a decision on how to hire someone. So you will be invited specifically to bid on things that you are never going to get appointed to. But if you don't help them fill their quota of the number of bids they need to get in, then you won't be invited to the work you can win. So understanding that sort of scenario comes into play. But when I was in Asia, because I'm not a terribly quiet or subtle person, I tried to turn that into a strength by going, I'm an Australian and I'm an Australian. I've worked in Australia my entire professional career. If I'm slightly more blunt, than the average person you talk to. That is me being Australian, not trying to be rude. So I got to ask questions and make recommendations in a slightly stronger way than some of my colleagues by playing that I'm an Australian. So we're just naturally a little bit louder and maybe blunter. And you have to be saying the right things and you can't be rude. But I came from, I've got 4 siblings. I came from a family of 5 children and grew up on a farm. So loud is my default kind of setting. And I have to manage that, but you can also turn it into a strength where other people may be thinking something but not saying something. You can say, well, I haven't been in the Asia market that long. Can you help me understand why this or that?
No, interesting. And I think you got to play to your strengths, right? Like you can't be something that you're not. And if you, as soon as you try and be that, I think it just becomes across as disingenuous. So that fake it till you make it advice that people say, I don't buy into that, in my opinion.
The other thing is I've always, as I said, been really interested in how do things work. I may be the only BD person in the universe who ever find the intricacies of transfer pricing actually really interesting. Because then they're going, okay, I get income tax, I get value-added tax, I get these sorts of things, but what is this transfer pricing? Why does it matter? And it's actually very interesting to me, but I think a lot of people don't find it interesting. So I've never worked with a team or a lawyer or an accountant even. I found audit interesting. So why does this matter? Why do you say assurance? Why don't you say certainty? All of these sorts of questions. And when you're working with people who really care about their business and what they do, and they're the CEO of their own company, even if they're in a larger partnership, because they have equity if they're at the partnership level, they find that real interest and enthusiasm for really understanding what they do and why that matters to clients. So then I can become the translator. Okay, so this is what you do, and it should matter to clients for these reasons, but sometimes they don't, they're not getting those reasons. How can we find a way to bridge that gap between the commercial oversight for the technical decision makers and you as a technical provider?
Yes.
So that if you find law really boring, or accounting or whoever you're working with, if you don't find what they're doing interesting, and this works for lawyers as well, if you find your clients really, really boring, maybe you need some new clients because they're going to read that in you. If you're interacting with them and then they're going like, oh, yay, widgets, whatever, like they will read that and you are a step behind in winning more work. If you're actually there going, wow, your widgets are really cool. How do you make them at this price? How do you get them to market? What are they used in? What do your clients use? That is you taking an interest in them. And yeah, you shouldn't be faking it. If you're faking it, they're going to read it and they'll be there going like, oh yeah, here's another salesperson who's making it up. If you're honestly interested in what they do, in them as a person as well, that gets you to one, a better ability to give them good advice, good commercial advice that actually really works for them. 2, understand when not to bug them. One of the things I tell new BD people is find out when billing day is and do not bother the lawyers, the partners, the legal assistants. Do not bother anyone on billing day. Unless the billing is on fire, you leave them alone. That is a big job. Shouldn't be as hard as it is, but it is. And that's me attempting to understand, just what life is like for the people I work with and making sure I'm not interrupting them when they've got something else critical on their mind. It's up to me to work around that because they can't change that deadline.
Good point. Good.
And demonstrating that in what you do. So if I know the billing day is terrible and then I go in and bug them anyway and put in a 2-hour, workshop meeting for something that could be done a week later, then they're going to read that as you don't care. Like, when you don't care, that's worse than not knowing at all.
That's very, very true. And like on the other side for you, like switching gears a little bit, you're dealing with high stress, high pressure situations. You're helping people uplift their winning of the bids and whatnot. But how do you relax yourself? How do you unwind? How do you reset, Marnie?
This is where it has historically been a do what I say, not what I do.
Yes.
So one of the reasons I've returned from Hong Kong, have gone from working in-house in roles with the big firms to having my own business is because I am terrible at that. I will work 16-hour days, 6 days a week for 6 months, and then wonder why I've suddenly got sort of some horrendous sort of head cold for 3 months and all the rest. But I'm working on that. So you can probably see in the background, I quite like plants. I'm building up my plants again. I had 40 in Hong Kong, and I'm up to about 12 now in Australia. So I'm building out my house plants because it gives me great pleasure when I get a new leaf.
I love that.
Also just spending time with friends, with family, doing things I enjoy, like going to the theater, going out to like music, all of those sorts of things to recharge your batteries, because bidding, winning work, working with lawyers is never not going to be intense. It's never sort of relaxing, close enough is good enough sort of environment. So you have to be, I think, intense when it requires it to be intense and focused and dedicated, but then take a step back, relax, and set up processes so the intensity is focused on what it should be. So like having processes in place, systems in place, so you're not spending 10 hours looking for the answer to a bid question that was answered 6 months ago. And this is where once you've got the effectiveness, make sure your team has the resources they need and the time to put those resources together so that they can do the best job possible, so that you're not sort of just always in a crisis, because it's always difficult to do things. Because in that sort of scenario, you never get to the point where you're sitting down going, but wait, are we really in the position? Have we really put our message across around why we're the best people to help them with this problem, to make this opportunity a reality? Because you're too busy scrambling to just get the mechanics of a response done. And that's a terrible place to be in as well.
Yeah, that's very true. You don't want to major in minor things rather than like really minoring in the major and focusing on that. What is it? I think it's the Pareto principle. Like 20% of the work you do or clients you deal with give you 80% of the revenue and the results, and pretty much everything like that. We just got to work out what that disparity is. And is there any passion projects you're working on at the moment that you can share, or any that's in the pipeline that you're excited about?
There's, I guess, two things. So I think I'm slightly a frustrated teacher / mentor. So I do have training programs that I've developed up over the last 15 years to help lawyers and business development people get better at winning work when you get to that point of we have to do a proposal or a presentation or some other formal procurement process. And I tailor that. So it's tailored for law and professional services, but also each time it has to be tailored for the particular scenario that people are working in. It has to work with the processes and things. So I'm revisiting that and building it out. And part of that is the context of the moment of generative AI, large language models, agentic AI. What can that do in the world of winning work? Now, what will it shortly be able to do? And what does that mean for how we should be approaching things and what resources and processes we need? So there's, in my mind, this really big, fierce debate happening at the moment of whether it's worth keeping a bid library. So there is one group of people who will say in the current technology environment, a well-structured, tagged, high-quality bid library and bid knowledge base that is hopefully drawing from your billing system. So you know which clients, who's working with the clients, all of that information is available, is absolutely critical. But also, you know, what are the questions you've asked previously? What are the questions you get asked frequently? All of these sorts of things. So you're not reinventing the wheel. Other people will tell you, no, you don't need that now. Generative AI is a magic wand. You just point it at your old bids, say abracadabra, and it will spit out a brilliant bid. I can't say they're wrong at this point. I have some severe doubts. I think the structured knowledge, and certainly I was at a conference earlier in the year in Dublin where there were people talking about this, and very few people had put in AI-enabled bid systems at this point, because it takes time to get approvals, to get everything working. So we're just starting to see the systems come in, and the technology is still developing. So what can we really effectively use AI for in bidding that will help us win more and free up time from the stuff that doesn't help you bid but win, but helps you go from there. So it's such a big topic, and it is so difficult to nail it down. There's been so much hype, but it is incredibly interesting to see what is happening right now. What does that mean for what skills are needed to win more work, and how do we make it, after we've made it effective and we're winning more work, efficient? How can we use this for efficiency? But things like I've seen people, one particular person in the UK has used ChatGPT to build a go no go model based on a particular firm's information. So it's basically, at that firm, this is what will change whether or not you can win the work, and it's completely based on their data. So it's not a general, like, if you don't know the client, you shouldn't bid, etc. It's really specific. I've also seen ones where, you used to have to spend a couple of hours maybe researching a client. If it was a big client, what are their strategic priorities? Who's the decision makers? All of this sort of thing. You can now lean on agentic AI to do that research for you and summarize it and go from there. So it doesn't replace the relationships, but maybe it takes 5 hours at the front of a big bid and turns that into, okay, you have a report you can send out, and we need our own intel, our own internal information, but here's something that someone would have spent a day doing previously that now they can do something else that will help us win more. So that is moving so quickly at the moment. I'm not keeping up. I don't know if anyone is keeping up, but it is.
It's hard to keep up with it all, right?
It's so critical to how we win work. Because I should also say, one of the other things that happened at this conference is a leading consultant in winning work, who works across all industries, was saying he had a law firm client call him, and in a panic because they'd lost a bid they didn't think they were going to lose. And so they went to the client and said, we need a debrief. The client said yes. They came in, always get a debrief. Always get a debrief when it matters. Get that information to feed into your process. But the client said, did you use AI to write your bid? And the law firm went, yes. And the client went, we thought so because there were sections that were identical to some of your competitors. They'd also used the same AI and asked the same questions. And even though both had thought they were tailoring the results, they were obviously pointing it at the internet, so it wasn't internal resources. The results, even though they were supposed to have been tailored, were almost identical. And how they knew this was because the client procurement was using AI to do a first level evaluation of the bids. So there's not only what is AI good for and useful for, where is it actually dangerous to rely on it without really properly understanding, how much of a differentiator is this quick, efficient drafting as a first stage? Is that differentiating in a bad way? Are you and one other firm getting knocked out of this process because you've relied too much on a publicly available tool and asked very similar questions because the clients probably said, here's a question you have to answer? So someone can say, pretend you're a lawyer wanting to get work from firm A. How would you answer this question? So it's really interesting, and it can be the death of your ability to win work as much as it can be sort of streamlining it or giving you better intel that puts you in a better position. So sorry, you can see I'm enthusiastic about this. He's asked for a passion project. There you go.
No, that's great. And I've kind of covers my next question. Where do you see the future of bidding with AI and whatnot? I think that basically covers it. It can be a great tool, but do not over rely on it because it can be quite dangerous, especially when it's giving overly generic, tailored things that your competitors are probably doing as well. So
got a system, if you're lucky enough to be working at a firm that has a bespoke system that is looking at your information and your relationship with the client, then that is much less likely to happen. So I think AI is absolutely a plus in a lot of ways for winning new work, for freeing up time to be able to win that work and understand sort of the nuances of a relationship. But it's a double-edged sword if you're using it wrong. And I think at the moment it's quite opaque. And if you're one of those lawyers who flicks an email to somebody and says, produce a bid, I've had a discussion with the client, produce a bid or a capability statement about this. And then you don't talk to them and share your insights so it could be customized. And then you get the draft back and you just clean it up a bit and shoot it out the door. And I would never recommend this be the approach, but it is the approach I see from a lot of lawyers. Your ability to understand where that exposure might be, where the information that's in that bid has come from, whether an AI has been used, just the ability to, if you're not really looking at it, if you're not sharing the insights and you're sending something generic, again, you're not demonstrating the understanding of the client because you're not engaged, because maybe you're thinking this needs to be more efficient. And again, I'm going back to, if you've got a $5,000 opportunity, if you've got a $50,000 opportunity, if you've got a £5 million opportunity, efficiency is important. But if you want the work and it's profitable and it will build your business and it's in line with your strategy, I would suggest winning the work is the first focus, and then figure out how to win it efficiently after that.
Well said there, Marnie. Well said. Makes sense. What's in the current era or in the past, what's the most unusual left of center client request that you've been asked to put your head towards?
It's interesting. There've probably been a few, but and if the better you know your client, the less left of center it is. In the work we do, I was once responsible for sponsorship budget, and I was asked to put a couple of $1,000s on a university toga party sponsorship.
Oh gosh.
Our drinking spree and various other things involved in the reasons behind that, but we won't go into that. I think when I was working within a central bid team, so often not engaging directly with the clients, there was one major Asia Pacific panel I was working with, and it was being led by the lawyers with the best relationship with the client, and they came from the dispute side of the practice, which don't tend to bid in the same way as a lot of the more transactional ones. So not only was I advising them on how to win an appointment to this particular panel, and we actually got permission to do a non-conforming bid because the information that had been asked for wasn't stuff that we could provide. But then when it came to do the beauty parade, I was actually part of the beauty parade because they're going we need you in the room. We don't know. We haven't done this before. And it did make sense. I was there as, we want to make sure we're giving you what you need, and so we can onboard you properly and make sure all of that happens as you need it if we are appointed. But I was actually there as a bit of a security blanket. So if something came out of left field, the team knew that I was there to help.
I love that. And obviously we stand on the shoulders of giants, and never done alone. Who has been a pivotal mentor in Marnie Payne's life, or an influence in your career, and why?
There've been a few, but going back into the depths of the dark ages when I was working with accountants. My first job with a major accounting firm, my first manager level job, I worked for Peter Young, who was then the director of strategy and development at PwC, and he was brilliant because I had new manager overconfidence, shall I say. I'd stopped listening and learning and thought I was a manager now. So I knew everything. And he, in his very quiet way, would say, if you're going to do this, then you don't need to talk to this person. And I'd be there going, why do I need to talk to that person? Because they used to head up that area. So he was very good in his low-key way about steering me through how much people matter in the decision making in professional services and partnerships. I think, yeah, and I owe him a lot from that, because I would have crashed and burned not knowing what I didn't know at that point. And I do try and pass that along and brief people in, because professional services can be very difficult. I think I'd also say Jennifer Kwasdorf, who was one of my directors when I first started in Asia. And she was brilliant and supportive. And also because I was brought in to change things and improve things. So, you know, win rates weren't where they should be. Partners and lawyers weren't happy because they had to spend time on bids, all sorts of things. So I was going in there to change things, and you need backup when you're changing things because it's always uncomfortable. And she was great about, again, giving me the lay of the land, giving me the benefits of her insights, but also her backup when I had annoyed somebody because I was questioning why we should particularly bid on a particular piece of work, or challenging that we should be providing a capability statement to a client who'd actually literally jumped the documentation part of a bid. They'd said, we just want a beauty parade, no documents. And one part of that was, we should send them a capability statement. And it's like, they literally said no documents, and you want to give them extra homework, extra reading. Like, no. So
come on, think about this, you know?
I should also say, like, less senior team members who've come from other cultures, just their insights, their understanding, how they see and approach things. It can be very easy to think you know everything about everything, but you know, often you don't. And it's somebody with a fresh perspective who's there going like, why would we do it like this? Why should we do it like this? How do we change things up?
Absolutely. And talking about changing things up, if you could change one thing about the legal industry, what would it be, Marnie, and why?
Oh, it's reputation. I think just with the general public, every time I see, you know, those lists of people that the general public distrusts, and there's journalists and there's politicians and often there's lawyers and things there as well. I think that is harsh, and I think people who think the law is red tape is, you know, they're not entirely wrong, but you know, the rule of law is very important. Understanding what you are agreeing to, and you know, having support for enforcing what you agree to. I think lawyers do important work, and I think too often they get brickbats rather than sort of approval for that. I mean, they also get very good paychecks, so it's
of course, you know, it works both ways, right?
But I think there's that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think lawyers are also often arrogant, but so it can make them less inclined to listen to advice. But I think it is incumbent on advisors to still give them the advice. Actually, the other thing, I think what should be changed about law is lawyers should be taught at a much earlier stage in their career how to engage with clients, what drives the profitability of the firm, their practice, their work, the commerciality around what clients care about, the steps that actually are needed if you want to win work with clients. You can have the best relationship in the world with some clients, but they still have to go through procurement processes. So all of those things around the broader practice of law rather than just legal advice and what's required there. And I'm sure lawyers are there going, no, we already know, we've got too much to do already. But I think the earlier you understand the breadth of the role and what's required, the easier it will be to get the right skills at the right times. I've seen too many young partners or new partners who have absolutely had challenges once they made a partner, because suddenly it's like, here's the revenue you have to be hitting for the firm to be performing in your role. And that's, you know, sometimes an unpleasant surprise, and they really struggle at that point to go, okay, how do I generate this then?
How do I do that? How do I do that? Well, that's a good point, actually, because, you know, everyone either wants to well, not everyone, but, the aspiration is to be partner in the firm or, lead your own shingle with being a barrister or whatnot, or your own leading law firm. What advice would you give young professionals tuning in, Marnie, on BD, law, and other things to help them succeed?
Think about how to be visible. Get broad experience so you can understand what aspects of law you enjoy and will want to focus on. Take note of what's available to help you build your ability to be promoted to do better jobs. So Cullen, you've written a great book on using
Thanks,
LinkedIn
Marnie.
career, but look at those things, become the person in the team who's known by the seniors because you're doing that. So maybe you're working in a big firm, and the senior partners are aware because a client's telling them, oh, that Cullen Haynes, he's a real go-getter, isn't he? I was commenting on our deal. That's amazing. I'm glad they're really interested in what we're doing. That is something that will resonate. And taking the opportunity to get involved in winning work. Wherever you go in law, whether you're in a single provider of legal services, whether you're working in a big firm, even if you're in-house, sort of how do you go about winning work, being the best provider to your clients so that they will come back to you again and again, because you don't want to be fighting for work every time.
No, not every time.
But you want to win work, do brilliant work, so the next time, even if they have to use formal procurement, they're going, well, we know who we want to appoint for this. We know they're great. We know they're great to work with. So get involved in those processes so you can be, stand out. Still have to be excellent at giving advice, legal advice, correct, brief, hopefully, all of those things. But there's an awful lot of lawyers out there. So if as a young lawyer you understand, have relationships with clients, understand how we win work, can be part of that process, that's a great position to be in.
Great points there, Marnie. And we're getting to the end of the stream. When all is said and done, how would you like to be remembered both professionally and personally?
Oh, that's always difficult.
Yes.
No, go forever. I think professionally as someone who not only really helped win new work, build relationships with clients, but you never wonder with me whether or not I'm interested and engaged and putting in 100%. So I hope that is sort of my legacy of, this is someone who found my career, my ability to run my firm really important and delivered on the goods. And personally, hopefully as someone who is always, willing to help and lend a hand. So whether it's giving someone a heads up or a connection to somebody at a role they're interested in at a firm, helping people move up in their career or make their choices, so that they can, a helping hand. I think it's easy to get too busy and too worried about yourself, but I've had people who've done that for me, and I think that's always a great place to be in. Like you having me on this show, hopefully we have provided some insights that are of use to all of your many lawyer clients, but it's also useful for me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marnie. Thank you for being on the show. Where can people find you? Where are you hanging out the most these days?
LinkedIn. I'm a bit of a LinkedIn tragic. I post there. First off, I am actually currently working on my website. So I do not currently have a standalone website. So LinkedIn is the place to go. I do post insights and articles there around various things. I have one coming out shortly around, and I haven't decided whether it's like 7 deadly sins of bidding and proposals, or if it's sort of flip it and make it a bit more positive around the cardinal rules for winning more work. Maybe I'll go with that.
I love that. I love that. Check out Marnie on LinkedIn. Be sure to connect. Thank you for being on the LawLive show, episode 72, Marnie. We'll bring you back in for some bonus questions in just a moment.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Marnie. And if you are a legend of law or know someone who is and you'd like to be on the show, we're booked up until March next year, but please get in touch. We come out every Wednesday, interviewing a leading legend of law. Also, we've got our sister shows, the Ledger Legends, which is interviewing high flyers in accounting, and also our Finance Live podcast, where we talk to leading professionals in the professional world, finance, buyers, agents, accounting, what have you. We talk to them and bring you their insights. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please do like and subscribe to the podcast. It really helps to extend the reach. And this is proudly brought to you by Legal Home Loans, Australia's only broking firm for lawyers. And of course, my new book, The Laws of LinkedIn. So be sure to get this, because like Marnie, I am a LinkedIn tragic, and I even wrote a book on it to help you succeed winning more business and getting to 7 figures on LinkedIn. So nonetheless, thanks so much, everyone. Have a great Wednesday. Bye for now. Take care. Bringing back Marnie for final questions here. If you had to explain your role at bidding and winning work to a 6-year-old child, Marnie, how would you go about doing that?
Ooh, I've yet to explain what I do to my family adequately, so this could be difficult.
There you go.
It's like, if you want more lollies, how can you convince the person with the lollies to give you more lollies? I help lawyers, grown-ups, convince the people with the lollies to give them more lollies. They're the best people.
I love that. Very simple. There we go. We should change the name of this to how to bid to win more lollies is what it is. Great stuff. If your pet or, your plants behind you could talk, how would they describe you?
Killing them with love occasionally. I tend a lot of plants, but there tends to be a bit of turnover because I assume that if they're looking a bit peaky, they need more watering. So I have now got a water meter to help me improve in that way, but possibly killing them with kindness.
Killing them softly with the kindness. I love it there, Marnie. And the final question for the whole of today, and thank you everyone for tuning in. If you could give yourself advice at any age, as in you could go back in time and visit a younger version of Marnie. I know you've been only on this earth, 35 years. What would you go back and say to yourself if you could go back in time?
Don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Good point.
So don't get so fixated on knowing everything or having all of the experience. Experiment, be bold, take some chances to learn. We don't learn through success as much as we learn through failures. So be willing
that.
to.
And would that be in uni or high school? When do you think you'd go back and tell yourself that?
Maybe when I first started working professionally, like after university.
After uni, it's like the big bad world. I'm giving you some advice, Marnie. I'm going to level with you. This is what you need to do. Thank you so much, Marnie, for being on the show today. It's been a wonderful pleasure. We're almost at the hour mark. I think that's a great way and a great segment to wind up there. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. And thank you, Cullen, and to your audience as well.
Absolute pleasure. All the best, everyone. Hope all is well. Take care.